And now we will be hearing from Phillip Kruse, who is a Swiss lawyer, who's going to give us a couple of cases, and then we'll have a few minutes at the end for questions and answers.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak here. It's a great honor to be in this house invited, and thank you very much for this very wide interest you have to this topic, WHO, because we are all affected by this topic, whether we are from France, from Germany, whether we are from within Europe or without, and also from Switzerland. Please, next slide. I'm here as a Swiss lawyer since 1997, and since end of 2020 I stopped my work in my specialized field in tax law in order to re-establish the rule of law, to re-establish constitutional rights and a science-based debate in times of emergency. Under this title I have led over 20 ordinary court procedures, and among others, last year, together with my team and with the strong support of international scientists, I have submitted a criminal complaint against Swissmedic, which is in Switzerland the highest authority, the highest agency with respect to the safety of medical products. And we have submitted this criminal complaint for wrongfully against Swissmedic for wrongfully authorizing these mRNA experimental substances. Please, next slide. So just a brief wrap up. What can we say? Where do we stand? It was said that this pandemic, we look back, this crisis actually was characterized by a tremendously bad international public health management under the guidance of WHO, and it was done by the way of recommendations that were defined by very few people, unaccountable, not elected, and these recommendations were taken by almost all member states as sort of an legally binding best practice, which led to an absolute uniformity within almost all the countries when it came to lockdowns, when it came to harmful measures, but also, as mentioned correctly, when it came to the blindness with respect to the question what were the real origins of COVID-19 and how dangerous was this phenomenon truly. So now, instead of looking back, instead of doing a correct after-action review, as it would be done as a matter of quality control, global established standard, WHO presents to us drafts for a pandemic treaty and drafts for new amended international health regulations that all aim at the same purposes, and that is to give WHO even more powers, even more money, and even to limit the powers and the sovereignty of the member state even more. And I just wanted to raise the attention that all of you are able to find these proposals. You will find these easily on the internet. This one is, these are the amendments to the international health regulations, and please, the other one is, as already mentioned, on the table, zero draft of the WHO. And this is worth mentioning because in Switzerland we see that the government tries to hide these negotiations from the people. Even when members of parliament rightfully ask the question to the federal government, please tell us what are the purposes of these negotiations, where do we stand? The answer was, at the beginning of March in the Parliament, we cannot say anything, we have not a draft any yet, and we can at earliest speak about it in May next year. So it is on the table, we can be informed, and we can say what is in there. So I briefly just go through the results of what is in it, because I feel the need and the importance for questions being discussed here. And if we do a wide sum up of the entire consequences, please, next slide, here we just see these two instruments. They will come to a vote next year in May at the World Health Assembly, not this year, but next year in May. So we have 1 year, we have roughly 12 months in all of our member states to get informed, to inform our members of parliament, to ask them questions, to stop these negotiations. And I'm very happy that this process has started here already in this parliament. And there was a brave member of parliament, even in the UK, Mr. Andrew Bridgen, who initiated a debate about these new instruments. This is the way to go forward, because it's about our rights. It's about the rights of all citizens, and it's about the constitutional order of all of our states, which we have seen was deactivated so shamefully during almost 3 years. There was no separation of power, no checks and balances, no possibility to, within a court proceeding, to have the question reassessed: how dangerous is this virus and how much makes it sense to have children go to school with masks. So our courts did not protect our own citizens. Please, next slide. So we will see, as a consequence out of these agreements, an executive leadership of the WHO in literally all countries. And the WHO recommendations will become legally binding. And there are even officials who say, no, that's not wrong, that's a misinformation. Please, next slide. No, it is not a misinformation. These amended international health regulations, they will in the future become legally binding. You can see that in Article 1 in the definitions, and you can see that, please, next slide, most prominently also in Article 13a, which is a totally new article, and frighteningly, you see there that member states recognize WHO as the guidance and coordinating authority and undertake to follow WHO's recommendations. So for the future, member states will be bound by this undertaking. Please tell this to everybody who means that WHO is just an advisory authority. Please, next slide. And so, most notably, these new rules will make it even more easy for WHO to start and to perpetuate emergencies under the name Public Health Emergency of International Concern, or even intermediary emergencies. And this is a perfect concept of self-empowerment. This is a concept of WHO's possibility to give itself power and take power away and take the sovereignty away from member states and take the people's rights away and take away the protection we otherwise would have under our national court system. Just with a snip of a declaration, now we have public health emergency of international concern. And WHO will have no incentive to stop any given emergency. And as mentioned rightfully, and that's one of the most important points Silvia mentioned, that there will be no accountability whatsoever. So, yes, now we switch, I think, to the end. Please go to slide number maybe 13. Yes, 13. Slide 13. I just wanted to raise the attention to one point that was mentioned, that literally every aspect of global life can give rise to a public health emergency of international concern, whether it is climate change, whether it is biodiversity loss or ecosystem degradation. Where does it start? Where does it end? There are literally no definitions under which WHO can start this process of a fake public health emergency of international concern. This is an absolutely outrageous no-go. So we see at the result, next slide please, that WHO will, as a consequence of these two instruments, receive unlimited powers to declare to declare a public health emergency of international concern, to apply harmful leadership, which means defining methods that ultimately do not result in protection, but result in harm, and thereby using also total information control. And one more slide, one last slide I would like which I have made to give us the overall picture of what we all will see. Slide, please, number 27. So slide number 27, I wanted to briefly summarize the overall dynamics, what we are going to see if we don't oppose the introduction of these new two instruments. We will see from the right side of the slide that from us, from the people, we will have to transfer our human rights, the power to the member states, our personal data, our health even, on the level of the states, who will pass it on, literally pass it on to WHO and to the producers of experimental substances. They will get rich, they will receive money, they will receive all the data, they will hold in their hands the power and the sovereignty that belongs to the member states, including intellectual property rights. And what do we get in return from giving up all the assets, all the rights, and all our data? In return, from top down, and WHO, which will be in total control as soon as they self-declare a public health emergency of international concern. In return, what do we receive? Is we get disinformation, we get fear, we get a transfer of liability to the states in terms of experimental products. These products, they will not make the producers liable, but our member states that are funded by our taxes. And we will get no safety in return whatsoever. And as mentioned, no accountability. And all this ultimately results for us, for all the citizens, and I emphasize even for rich citizens, I would say probably over 90% of the entire population is in that situation, that we, as soon as WHO finds it's time for another fake, will have actually no safety at all and no benefit at all. We will face restrictions that will lead to a duty to get injected with a substance that is experimental, that will have no benefit but a lot of harm. And all that is actually done, read the last slide, the next one please, by WHO without ever having made a proper after-action review. Can you imagine being an entrepreneur or being somewhere in the business world and not doing a reassessment of your projects you have done with the purpose to do it better next time in order to avoid mistakes? Nobody of us would be allowed to do so in his company, but WHO can do so. And even without ever having investigated the true origins of SARS-CoV-2, what was going on in these laboratories and what is about this gain of function. Even they want to have the right to hold the control of this gain of function. And one more time, without any accountability. And the only answer to this development is a strong no. And this no must come from all the people all over the world, all together. That is a very simple response, because we see as a result that there will actually be a total loss of control of our lives, a total loss of our rights. We will have to the risk to lose our economic basis. And even our member states, they will be losing their economic basis, and in return we get a big nothing burger. So therefore, I must say, we have 12 months' time altogether. We will work together across the borders and do our best to inform all other fellow citizens the politicians who have not yet been waken up, and I thank you very much for the work we are doing together. Great. Look forward to it.